Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining TAESA's Q2 2024 earnings release video conference. We have simultaneous translation available for those who may need it. Just click on the interpretation button, which is the globe icon at the bottom of the screen, and choose either English or Portuguese. For those listening in English, there is an option to mute the original audio in Portuguese by clicking on Mute Original Audio. We would like to inform you that this video conference is being recorded and will be made available on the company's RI website, where you'll find also the earnings release. It is possible to download the presentation in English using the chat icon. Participants will not be able to turn on their mics during the entire event. To ask questions, click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and type in your question, which will enter the queue. Please note that questions can be submitted during the presentation and will be read out live by our IR officer, Cristiano Grangeiro, and our IR specialist, Juliana Castelli, and then answered by the board of directors during our Q&A session. We would like to emphasize that the information contained in the presentation and any statements that may be made during the video conference regarding TAESA's business prospects, projections, and operation and financial targets are the beliefs and assumptions of the company's management and in the information currently available. Forward-looking statements are not guarantees of performance since they involve risks, uncertainty, and assumptions as they refer to future events and therefore depend on circumstances that may or may not occur. Investors should understand that general economic and market conditions, in addition to other operating factors, may affect the future performance of TAESA and lead to results that materially differ from those expressed in such forward-looking statements. Now I am going to turn over to Cristiano Grangeiro to start the presentation. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to TAESA's Q2 2024 earnings release video conference. We hope it proves to be quite informative. We would like to remind you that you may ask questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A button. At the end of the presentation, we will open up the Q&A session where your questions will be answered by our officers. We hope you enjoy this video conference. On slide 3, we will go through our strategic drivers, which are key to TAESA's good performance. Our mission is to connect Brazil with safe and reliable energy. Our vision is to be the electricity transmitter of greatest value to society. And our core values are based on relevant and fundamental issues, which are: we generally care for people, we act with integrity, building relationships of trust, we strive for excellence in everything we do, and we are TAESA. On slide 4, we have an update on our external and internal commitments to the compliance and diversity agendas within our strategic pillar of sustainability. Our current public commitments are the 100% transparency movement and the Race is Priority movement, both part of the Global Compact of the UN and adopting the UN Women's Empowerment Principles. The 100% transparency movement, which TAESA joined in 2022, was the first national effort to encourage companies to go beyond legal requirements, strengthening integrity mechanisms to become more resilient and role models in the corporate world. TAESA has already achieved 3 of the 5 goals to be achieved by 2030, and we remain focused on achieving the others and ratifying our commitments to the sustainability agenda, which is key to our business. With regard to the Race is Priority movement, 30% of our leaders must be Black people or from vulnerable ethnic groups by 2025 and 50% by 2030. The company has currently about 29% of self-declared Black leaders. With regard to the female empowerment principles, TAESA committed to having 50% female leaders by 2030, and today its female leaders account for about 26%. There is a long way to go, and the company's top management has been gearing efforts to addressing these issues. In addition, some of our current diversity-driven initiatives are the training of female electricians, the qualification of people with disabilities, and humanized retirement. Regarding the female electricians training course, in 2024, we've held the 4th edition of the successful program. It is free of charge and designed exclusively for women, aiming at opening doors in a sector historically dominated by men by breaking down barriers and stereotypes and fostering gender equality. The People with Disabilities Qualification Project that has been running since 2021, we would like to emphasize that we've established a partnership with Centro de Integração Empresa Escola, which had 20 people, young people trained in subjects related to digital inclusion, the labor market, and the energy industry. In addition, the company has recently been awarded the Friends of UC Award in recognition of the excellence performance of the People with Disability Qualification Project. The Humanized Retirement Project is the most recent project, which started last year and is about providing professional, personal, financial, and well-being guidance for our employees over 60 years old. Before moving on to the next slide, we would like to highlight that the company has created a working group and initiated discussions on CVM Discussion Resolution 193, which provides for the preparation and disclosure of financial information related to sustainability based on the international standard issued by the International Sustainability Standards Board, ISSB. There is ongoing important discussion about the scope and formats of the reports within IFRS S1 and S2. Thus, we have sought information from experts to be as prepared as possible for the mandatory disclosure of the reports starting in the 2026 fiscal year. As we do in every second quarter, we highlight the new RAP cycle that will be valid as of the next quarter, that is from July 2024 to June 2025. Looking at the operational cycle, the inflation adjustments were minus 0.34% for contracts indexed by the IGPM and 3.93% for contracts indexed by the IPCA. In this sense, TAESA's operational RRP had a negative impact of 7.5 million reais due to the IGPM, which was more than offset by the positive impact of 55.9 million due to the IPCA adjustment. Earnings from the final phases of Santana and Ivaí increased it by 8.6 million reais when comparing the cycles, and we see a negative impact of 46 million reais due to the periodic tariff review in transmission concessions due to a regulatory process to reposition the RAP at a level compatible with investments made, operational costs, quality level, among other aspects. The main impacts of this tariff review are related to reinforcements authorized in the past and whose RAPs were repositioned, some downwards and some upwards, starting in July 2024. It is important to remember that RAPs established when any reinforcement is authorized is provisional until the first tariff review, when investments are evaluated by ANEL and the final RAP is established. As you can see, the greatest impact was on the Novatrans concession of 37 million reais in two large reinforcements authorized in 2017 and operational in 2019. All that caused our RAP to stabilize slightly, increasing to 10.2 million reais when comparing the cycles. We highlight that this total RAP amount does not include the adjustment installments related to the tariff reviews of the reinforcement that will be offset over the next 5 tariff cycles. It was worth pointing out that once new projects are completed, they will add about 445 million in RAP to TAESA. We expect to complete Pitiguari and new Novatrans reinforcements in the 24-25 cycle. These two projects add up an RAP of 65 million reais. After all our projects are delivered, our RAP will total 4.1 billion reais, up 12.5%. Now moving on to the presentation of the highlights that we have on slide 6. So the first thing we see is an improved operation course of the financial results, and income tax and social contribution positively affected regulatory net income, which is up 22.9% and total 294 million reais in Q2. The periodic tariff review established by Resolution 3342 and 3343 published on July 9 had an impact on the company as shown in the previous slide. The key impacts were on the redefinition of the RAP of reinforcements, mainly Novatron's concession until December 2030, totaling about 40 million a year. This amount is slightly different from the impact of 46 million reais highlighted in the previous slide, since we are showing exclusively the impact of the reinforcements. This review of reinforcements caused a redefinition of adjustment installments, which refer to the difference between the provisional RAP defined back in 2019 and the definitive RAP, which will be offset in 5 annual installments until June 2029, totaling about 35 million per year. The company then recognized these adjustment installments retrospectively, restating the past financial statement with the following impacts. In the regulatory earnings, the impacts were minus 7.3 million reais in the first 6 months of 2024, minus 14.4 million reais in the first 6 months of 2023, and minus 80.3 million reais before 2023, which was accounted directly to shareholders' equity. In the IFRS earnings, the impact were 0.5 million reais in the first months of 2024, minus 2.1 million in the first 6 months of 2023, and minus 155.9 million reais before 2023, which were accounted for the corporate shareholders' equity. I'd like to take this opportunity to emphasize that the figures presented in the following slides reflect these impacts. For the details can be found in the quarterly financial information explanatory note 4 and in the earnings release. We had strong cash generation in Q2, reflecting the impact of the mergers carried out. We have announced yesterday a 23.3 million reais dividend distribution related to Q2 2024 earnings. This distribution of the 6-month period earnings was not affected by the adjustment of the adjustment portion. Obtaining licenses for Tangará and Ananaí allowed for works to begin on their respective stretches. The lower capex was affected by the delay in obtaining environmental license, which had an impact on Ananaí. On slide 7, we have highlighted our key regulatory results, which directly reflects the company's net generation, and we will give further detail over the next slides. The company's net revenue in TAESA consolidated view was down 7.2% quarter versus quarter, totaling 579 million reais in Q2 2024. The 6-month cumulative EBITDA was down net revenue was down 4.8%, totaling 1.1 billion reais. EBITDA quarter versus quarter was down 7.8%, totaling 485 million reais in Q2. EBITDA margin fell from 84.3% to 83.7%. 6-month cumulative EBITDA was down 7.5%, totaling 962 million reais, and a margin down from 85.6% to 83.3%. As you will see, these effects are related to non-recurrent events, such as those associated to VP dating from 2023. Our operating performance was stabilized with a 99.38 availability rate. Our VP RAP ratio was 2.04% in the first half of the year versus minus 1.32% last year, which, like I said, was affected by the reversals that occurred in 2023. Specifically, the case of sabotage at Novatrans that happened in Q1 2023 and the suspension of VP collection at AAT by injunction, which I will give you further details later on. Together, these two non-recurring events related to reverse totaled 28 million reais and that are negative, which improved last year's result. Our net operating income was positive, up 23%, like I've said before, and in the 6-month cumulative view, total 8.1%, totaling 435 million reais. And like I said, mainly due to operational cost improvements, greater financial results, and changes in return, tax, and social contribution, as we'll further detail. On slide 8, we separate the lines of the income statement that explain the regulatory net income. The regulatory net income was up by almost 23% year on year, totaling 294 million reais in Q2. This positive result is mainly explained by the financial result per se. So we see 43.2 million reais here, an increase, basically explained by the lower IPCA and CDI between periods compared, on top of the reconciliation of the IPCA and the realized IPCA accounted for monthly in the monetary variation line. In addition, we had an income tax and social distribution changes due to the deduction from the tax base of interest on equity that was announced last May, totaling 145 million reais, and tax efficiency due to the merger with 4 companies between the end of last year and April of this year. In addition, we also saw an improvement in operational costs, which minimized the reduction in EBITDA, as we will see as follows. While we are at it, on the next slide, we explain the main effects that led to the drop of 41.2 million reais from a margin of 84.3% in Q2 2024 to a margin of 83.7% in Q2 2024. On slide 9, like what happened last quarter, the RAP was affected by the negative impact of the IGPM in the 23-24 cycle of minus 4.5%, which readjusted 2/3 of our operating RAPs, which was partially offset by the IPCA readjustments in Category 3 contracts. The impact of 19.2 million on the variable portion this period is explained by the reversal in the AT conjunction in Q2 2023 due to an injunction that it was suspended until the merits of the case are judged. We are still waiting for it to be judged since it was a case of an extreme weather event. The VP for the Q2 2024 stood at 1% on the RAP within TAESA's historical levels. On the other hand, operating costs showed an improvement of 3.6 million reais in the comparison, mainly in our 2 largest OPEX items. Personnel costs were up by less than inflation growth in the period, driven by an increase in open positions, and third-party services are down 18% due to lower spending on administrative and technical consultancy services and on clearing off the right-of-way. Excluding non-recurring events, mainly those associated with the reversals of VP that took place last year, the drop in Q2 is 5.1% and only 2.6% in the 6-month cumulative period, much lower than the 7.5% drop shown on slide 7. The margins in both views are much more in line with previous periods. On slide 10, we present the corporate IFRS net income. Income was up 81.9% quarter versus quarter, totaling 403 million reais in Q2 2024. In the 6-month cumulative view, growth was about 29% versus the previous year, totaling 777.8 million reais in the first half of 2024. The key drivers for this result in Q2 2024 versus Q2 2023 were a 122 million reais increase in monetary restatement review, driven by higher macroeconomic indexes, especially the IGPM, an increase in the construction margin due to greater investment in new projects, but that was partly offset by the delay in the environmental license for Ananaí, which negatively affected the calculation of the construction margin, an improvement in operation cost, PMSO, as mentioned before, growth of about 40 million reais using the equity method, mainly due to higher IGPM, which also affects the income from the monetary correction of our shareholdings. Greater financial result, as we have already mentioned in the regulatory earnings slide. These positive effects were partially offset by the reversal of the VP in ATU by an injunction last year, which negatively affected the comparison of this line, as I have already mentioned. On slide 11, we present the progress of some of the projects under construction. Even though obtaining environmental licenses from the competent bodies has been challenging, we have taken several actions to minimize these impacts, and we have already produced some positive results. We have obtained the installation license for a section of the Ananaí Bateias Curitiba last line, which allows works to begin on a critical part of the project. In addition, we have also obtained more installation licenses for the Tangará project, allowing for work to progress on other important sections of the project. Due to the delay in Ananaí's environmental license, CapEx to date remains naturally lower than expected, totaling 364 million reais in the first half of 2024. However, the actions taken to mitigate the delay have allowed us to work without any significant impact on Ananaí's business plan. We have brought forward actions and initiatives that do not depend on licenses. We have managed to segregate the licensing processes with the environmental agencies releasing work fronts. We have implemented parallel construction and assembly activities and renegotiated deadlines for carrying out activities in line with market averages, strengthening our relationship with some of our suppliers. We have also worked on financial fronts, such as using contractual clauses for storing materials and postponing manufacturing, thus reviewing disbursement curves and prospecting for tax benefits at the federal and state levels. On the progress of other projects, the first tower of the Pitiguari project has been assembled, and the equipment and material for laying the cables have already been made available in the field. In Tangará, we have segregated licenses and managed to release the sections necessary for the physical planning of the work so far, which allowed for timely addressing the licensing challenges with no impact on the project. Lastly, the Sair project is at the executive design stage on schedule. Moving on to slide 12, we present TAESA's debt profile. At the end of the first half of 2024, TAESA's total debt total 11.1 billion reais, considering all our shareholdings. The company's leverage was at 4.0. The actual average cost of debt was 4.99% and an average term of 4.7 years, which was lengthened by the 15 issuance of debentures with a first series of 5 years that prepaid a more expensive debt that would mature next year, and with a second series of 10 years. Our cash position totaled the first half in 1.5 billion reais. 66% of that was IPCA indexed debt, 31 CDI indexed, and now 2% IGPM indexed due to the second series of the 15th issuance concluded in April this year. The company's corporate rating on a national scale, which is monitored by Moody's and Fitch, is AAA, which is the highest recognized by the agencies. On slide 13, we see the distribution of dividends we announced yesterday based on this year's cumulative regulatory earnings. The board of directors approved the distribution of 223.3 million reais between dividends and interest on equity, and the base date of August 15, 2024. This distribution is equivalent to 65 cents per unit of TAESA, and the payment to be made on November 27, 2024. It is important to further explain this announcement. The regulatory net income for the first half of 2024 totaled 483.5 million reais. Due to the adjustment of the RAP restated in this period of 7.3 million reais, the adjusted income would be 490.9 million reais. Considering that our proposal for distribution of dividends announced last May is of a minimum 75 of regulatory income, we estimated 368.2 million reais to be distributed related to cumulative earnings. Since you have already paid out 144.9 million reais on the first quarter of this year, the distribution proposal approved by the board was of 223.3 million reais, which is equivalent to a payout of almost 76%, which is slightly higher than the limit of the proposal announced this year. With this announcement, the total amount distributed so far totals 986 million reais, equivalent to 2.86 reais per unit, or considering TAE 11's recent prices, a dividend yield of about 8.1%. Well, that's all we had to present today. Now we'll start and move on to our Q&A session. Thank you all. Thank you, Cristiano. So now we'll start our Q&A session. That is going to be a live session, and we'll have the officers of the company here with us. To ask questions, click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and type in your question, which will enter the queue. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us. We have almost 600 people here with us. I'm here. We have Juliana, the IR specialist here, and we have Renato Pacquiao, our CEO. We have Fabio Fernandes, our M&A Chief Officer. We have also Luis Alves, our Implementation Officer, and Marco Faria, our Technical Chief Officer. We have presented the tariff review. So we will have Glena Mendonça, that is our regulatory manager here, and we will answer the questions. But before, we will have Pac's initial remarks. Thank you, Cristiano. Thank you, everyone. I think that now we are in a good moment here, and today is a very interesting session because we have our analysts here, we have our investors and the market to listen to us. So we are really happy to have the opportunity to express our intentions. we ended the first half of 2024. I think that we had some of the consistent results that we expected. We saw some improvements in terms of the mergers that allowed for producing good results. We see a cash flow that is very positive with strong cash generation, benefiting some of the companies in our mergers. We are reviewing some of the costs and we're looking ahead, considering what we have going on in our company. And we think that we need to plan increasingly better results internally to gain cost efficiency and produce even better results in the future. We have here some officers that will detail the projects under construction and what's in our pipeline. And just for you to understand the progress, it's important to detail what's going on. And with regards to dividends, I think that this great earnings allow for following the distribution of dividends of about 75% of the regulatory net income for 2024. So we will be able to comply with that. I'm sure that there's maybe some answers about the future. And we have also had the result of the periodic tariff review, which is something that is applied to the companies in the industry. And I'd just like to point out that this impact will last for 5 years because it considers the deadline of the concessions. So these effects are not a long term, but that do affect the concessions that are ongoing until 2030. We have highlighted some really important figures in terms of dividends, of net income. So we're really happy to go through some of these figures and announce these figures, and we are really open to any questions you may have. So thank you, Cristiano. Okay, thank you, Paki. I do have some questions here. I will try to answer some of the questions that are similar. So the first, for example, here, I think we talked about the payout, and they want to see, one question is if there is an inflection point of the company's debt, or what could we expect of the leverage of the company in the following months. Okay, so thank you for the answers. I would just like first to point out to the commitment we made on the first half of the year of having a dividend distribution of at least 75% of the regulatory net income. Whenever we are planning anything in our company, we really do have our top priorities to preserve the quality of our service. But we also understood that it's possible to comply with the 75% rule in 2024. With this in mind, our financial planning considers the amortizations, debt, funding, and also the dividend distribution. This year we have announced and we have been working for that, but we've been consistent with the distribution of at least 75%, considering the first half of the year. And if you remember for 2025 and so on, if we have the same conditions, we have mentioned at least 90% of the regulatory net income if we continue in that sense, right? So what we said last time is what we are repeating today. As of 2025, the idea is to have a minimum of 90%. And we are, of course, working on our budget and on our forecast to eventually update the information. But at this moment, we do not understand that we need to say anything different regarding the 90% in the future. With regards to leverage, as we said, it was 4 times. Maybe it is our peak, but also within our financial planning and what we expected for our company, for us to have financial strength, continue paying dividend as expected, and to go back to the bidding process in the future. So we had a very strong and consistent first half of the year, really in line with what we say that is our top priorities, our business priorities. Well, thank you, Peg, and good morning, everyone. The next question is about the bidding process and the auction, and I will ask our Fabio for him to give us his take about the next bidding process or return tax or what we expect. So thank you, Juliana. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us. Well, we will have a bidding process in September, and the company has a really promising outlook. We're talking about a 3.4 billion in 3 series. So the first is it's big, larger. The first totals about 3, and then the other 2 are a bit of lower value, lower amount. But like Cristiano said and Pacquiao, growth is in our DNA. TAESA, if we look back over the last 5 years, we have invested over 4.4 billion investments, which generated an additional RAP, and we even expected, we have RAP expected to enter as a source of revenue. So our debt profile is in line with this investment cycle. And now we do understand that new projects that may add value or create value for the company, we always look into all this bidding process and auctions if they allow for creating value. So we see a promising outlook here in the second half of the year in September. We have over 43 concessions in 14 states and the federal district, which allow for an interesting operation as a whole. Like Cristiano mentioned, we have been controlling our costs. We have a pre-tax of 4.99 with a 5-year term. So right now, we have the capabilities to continue with a competitive advantage and to create value. But like we have always done, we are going to consider all the auctions, and if it makes sense for us, we are going to bid. And I am sure that if we do that, our shareholders can expect great returns. Thank you, Fabio. So we have Rafael here with another question, and I'm going to ask Paki. He's saying, congratulations for this solid results. And what about the RAP drop as of 2030? Now, what do you intend to do about it? Well, thank you for the question, Rafael. We, in our discussions and in our business planning, in everything we do, we try to address that. And I think that we have some things interesting that are already going on. Last year, we made sizable investments. So we picked an investment to have a strong source of revenue. So we've taken action to be more disciplined financially, to continue growing sustainably in the future. Let's say in even the short term. So I would point out to 2 things regarding this drop in our AP. One is to be back in this auctions and to keep bidding and to win concessions, for example. And we are also looking internally on to see if we can improve and gain efficiency within our operations. We do understand that it could improve our activity and we could continue growing in the market. So right now, I don't have anything specific to say in the short term, but I do believe that these actions we've taken show the consistency that we aim at and that we have a good business plan that we are carrying out and making it happen. And just one example is this dividend distribution that shows how consistent we have been, which also allowed for business growth. If we consider our debt, we are almost peaking what we expected, but now we will also have some money coming in the future that will allow for new investments. So the company has been gearing efforts into that, and we have never gone a different route except that is not growth. Well, we have a question from the analyst from Safra with regards to the licensing and the environmental bodies that are that have been challenging. Can you comment on the impact on NNIE and on the CapEx projects that you have? Well, thank you for the question. Yes, when we're talking about transmission projects, only after we get the licensing to install, we can start construction works. And for NNIE, we have IBAMA for Linha Ponta Grossa SIS that connects two states, Paraná and São Paulo. And we also have the substation Club Balete in Baleias, whose licensing depends on IATA, the state agency. So the first Curitiba Leste Bateias, we have obtained the license from IATA. In considering our planning, this was the first step, so we did it, and we are starting the construction works for this first line. And with regards to the IBAMA, there is of course an impact of the undertaking, especially from Protagrosa SIS, but I think we can bring forward some things regarding the pipeline with Enel. When we consider the return and the investment, we have taken all measures considering cost analysis or change in curves or tax benefits that even if we have to change the deadline, we can benefit from the project, like I said. So there is a possibility of meeting the demands and just continue complying with the returns expected of the project. Well, the next question we have is from André Sampaio, Santander, and he asks, does TAESA still looks to merging with any other companies? Well, Andrea, we have started some mergers last year and we have finalized these mergers in April of this year. And we are always considering new opportunities in right now. We don't have anything to announce in our pipeline, but from time to time, we will analyze the market to see if there's any opportunity we can tap into. And I'm sure that we are going to continue doing that if we find it interesting for shareholders. So straight to the point, we've been always mapping these opportunities, but right now we don't have anything new to announce, but in the future, it can happen again. Well, thank you, Peck. We have had some questions here that were specific. I don't think we have any further questions, but if you have any questions, I am Juliana and the other teammates that we have are available to answer any questions you may have later on. So now I'll turn over back to his final remarks. I would just like to thank everyone for being here and for your interest in our company. And I would just like to emphasize that we are a company driven for growth, and we are trying to be increasingly disciplined to look into our costs and be consistent with our project, with our dividend distribution, and continue our solid management. But overall, I would just like to say that we did a great job, and thank you so much for your interest in our company. And if you have any questions, just reach out. We have our investor relations channels available for you. So thank you so much.